Good morning, everyone. My name is Himanshu Rattan. I'm a partner with KPMG, and a very warm welcome to you, all of you, to day one of the 8th Smart City Expo. It's my pleasure to be moderating this session today on how do we create a conducive ecosystem for innovation in the country. I've been associated with development of the startup and innovation ecosystem over the past several years, and I've had the privilege of supporting DPIIT in preparing the first ever Startup India Action Plan, which was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in January 2016. As part of the session today, we'll be discussing where are we in terms of the innovation ecosystem in the country today, where are we with regard to startups. We'll also be discussing the interventions that are required, whether it's from a policy perspective, financial incentive perspective, mentorship perspective, to get the ecosystem to the next level. And I'm really kicked to have an amazing panel with me today who will be deliberating and discussing. First of all, let me just welcome Gul Panag. Can we have a good round of applause for Gul? I think Gul needs no introduction. She's a multifaceted personality. She's a beauty pageant winner, a certified pilot. She's recently done her LLB. She's a lawyer as well. But today we'll be discussing with Gul on her role as a businesswoman and an entrepreneur. Gul, welcome. Can we have a round of applause for Gul? Next, we have Dr. Omkar Roy. Dr. Roy is the chairman of Startup Odisha. He's been the head of STPI in his previous role, wherein he helped the entire IT ESDM sector grow at a very, very massive pace. And he's also have been instrumental in taking the IT and IT ESDM sector to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and also has kickstarted this tech startup revolution in the country. Dr. Rai, please welcome on the stage. Can we have a round of applause welcoming Dr. Rai, please? Next, I have Aastha Grover with me. Aastha leads the Startup India Hub under Invest India and has been the founding member of the team. She's over the past 7-8 years, she's been leading the startup and innovation ecosystem development in the country, sitting at the center. Please welcome Aastha. With that, we'd like to begin the session, and I'll request Aastha to start with a presentation providing an overview of the startup ecosystem in the country. Over to you, Aastha.
Thank you, Himanshu, and a very good morning to all of you and to my fellow panelists, Omkar sir, Gul. May I request for my presentation on the screen as well, please? Okay, so while they bring in the presentation in, what I want to take you all through this morning is a very interesting journey. And this is a journey of India led by innovation and startups. So any guesses on what this picture looks like? It's about 7 to 8 years old. Anyone wants to take a guess what this place is or was actually? Any random guess would also do. So we wanted to keep this a two-way interaction. Okay, I'll give it to you. On the next slide, this was the Mumbai airport, the Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport. Fast forward to 2018, this is how it looks like, right? So this is the face of New India. Let me take you through one more example. Okay, this is a highway. I will give you a clue. Any guesses on which highway this could be? Okay. No, but now look at this. Okay, this was the Meerut highway back in 2014. 4 years down the line, and this is how it looks like. A multi-lane, super specialty, if I would say, fast-forward highway. And this was the Kochi airport, 2013, all powered by solar energy and solar panels as of today. So this is the face of New India that we are offering, and why innovation and startups are so important is because of 3 prime reasons which the government of India identified back 7 years ago. So 2016, our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi announced and launched the Startup India Action Plan. That has changed the face of India when it comes to revolutionizing this journey. Built on these three pillars, we are here to support you in this journey. Now let me quickly take you through the journey in a very interesting representation. So if the number of startups back about 8 years back was the size of Leaning Tower of Pizza, about a handful only, right? If we talk about tech startups, there were about 4,000. Startups registered with the government of India was even lesser, about 400. Today, it is as tall as Burj Khalifa with 95,000 coming from the length and breadth of the country. We look at the funding. If back then the funding was equivalent to 1 Kohinoor, today it is a massive 10 Kohinoor. What does it highlight? That the strength of an ecosystem is not just growing in numbers, but also in terms of the funding that is attracting from players. You talk about the unicorns, of course, has gone up from a handful to about 107, and the incubators supporting it. If there were as many as a few Domino's outlet, today there are about 7x. What has led to this journey? What is the growth? Let's experience it in terms of consumer growth. I don't know how many, I see a mixed crowd of young people as well as experienced entrepreneurs. Back in the day, if I had to go to, eat my favorite food, I remember waiting outside the restaurant in a queue, putting my name on the wait list and waiting. The pharmacy stores, the near mom and pop stores were all around. Instead of getting the exact change back, I would, really cherish the halls and the mints that were given by the local grocery stores. To book, to go from a place A to place B, waving our thumb on the road was very common to stop an auto rickshaw or a cab. You look at, I was always late to my tuition centers because they were a little far. Finding the best tutors near your house was a challenge, going to the best tutors around. Booking holiday packages, LIC insurances through our father's friend who would have gone to those places, to running this all by cash. Fast forward to today, what has changed? You want to order medicines, there is a startup like a 1mg or a PharmEasy changing it for you. You don't need to wait outside a restaurant. Your favorite food can be served at home thanks to Zomato and Swiggy. You don't need to wait on a road to book a cab. There is Ola and an Uber for it. You don't need to go to tuition centers. The best of the educators, the best of the learners are brought to you at home thanks to an academy or a Byju's. You don't need to book holiday packages basis your friend's recommendation. There is a Make My Trip, there is a Goa Bibo. And everything that we see today is not paid by cash anymore. I don't remember the last time I carried cash. It's all done digitally. Paytm, digital cards, everything. In fact, the latest innovation by a startup was a ring enabled with NFC. I just tap it on a machine and it's through. I don't even need to carry a wallet now. What is common amongst this is every change, everything that we operate, breathe and live is not a Fortune 500 company. It is a startup. It is a startup that dreamt like you all. It is a startup that found a problem and gave a solution. And that's why, my friends, you guys are so important to the economy. You guys are changing the shape of how we live, breathe, and operate. With that, if you want to get associated with the government of India, this is the definition that we follow. This is the eligibility criteria, so to say. You have to be a registered entity, not more than 10 years old. What it will give you is this hand-holding support across the life cycle of the startup. So right from early stage funding to growth stage funding, learning modules, market access, and everything. Over the last few years, the most common ask I have from the entrepreneurs is, हमें पैसा चाहिए, हमें loan चाहिए, या हमें customer चाहिए. And I think over the years, I have also modified my presentation to answer these questions first. However, I would like to start by saying the two most profitable unicorns in India were bootstrapped. Till date, they don't have any external source of funding, which also means that if you prove to build a sustainable business model, funding will follow or maybe you will not need it. But having said that, for the startups in the audience, this is how you should approach a funding thing. First, look at the sector that you're working in. There are schemes given by different government departments across these sectors. So for example, for the smart cities as well, The DHI Prism scheme will follow. The Agri Fund has been announced. Defense is there, and a lot of other schemes. All this information also available on the Startup India website. The next is to look at state-specific scheme. Dr. Omkar is with us in the panel. You know, Odisha has a beautiful scheme for startups, the Odisha Startup Growth Fund. Similarly, every state department, today 31 states and union territories have a startup scheme. When I started, it was just 4. We have helped the states come up with a policy with specific incentives for startups, for women entrepreneurs, and you know, you should be aware and take part of that. Now, when it comes to the center, we start with the growth stage funding that is done through SIDBI. If you're in your early stage, there are grants. I would always encourage you to avail grants before taking money from angel investors or VCs. Grant money comes with a milestone basis, but a grant is not attached with the fact that you will have to pay any interest or return the money or dilute your equity. So look out for the government grants, and you know, we recently started the credit guarantee scheme. What it means is that without giving a collateral to the bank, you can take money from the bank because the government is backing that debt for them. So very briefly, for startups in the mature stage, this is the fund of funds. We've got 700 plus startups funded. There are about 90 plus VCs. इन सब VCs की लिस्ट हमारी वेबसाइट पे है. Go by the thesis, approach them. As a government, we are very proud कि हमने 7,000 करोड़ इकोसिस्टम में अभी तक डाला है, जिससे 55,000 करोड़ इकोसिस्टम में आ गया है. So we have seen a 6x catalyzing effect, which means the fund available to be invested in the ecosystem has substantially grown. We have the early stage. This is what I was talking about. Grant money, 20 lakh given to you in your early stage journey, or a convertible debt. This is done through incubators, completely transparent, paperless. You don't have to visit anyone, just apply online. Then you should also be familiar of the innovation challenges and programs run by different corporates. It not only gives you a cash grant, but a great mentorship from the corporates, as well as a brand identity and a visibility that yes, you are the best in the field that you're working in. What is more important is that the art of storytelling and pitching. So I think what we have been doing is with people from Sequoia, with people from Indian Angel Network and the likes, taking the art of storytelling and pitching. Be a part of these workshops to improve your pitch. Okay. Talking about the next pillar after funding is about market access. We work with, so market access, how I like is sometimes, you know, especially with the startups in the smart cities, the government may be your end user, right? So how to sell to the government is through the government e-marketplace. You get exemptions on government tenders. In fact, it is a unicorn of its own. $1 billion worth of sales has been done. We can help you get onboarded. We can help you connect with the government departments for your products to them. There are corporates with the challenges I mentioned. And finally, if you are a growth stage startups, we have a global market access program where we take you to different countries globally, showcasing the best of the Indian innovations. It is a partly sponsored trip, so the government invests in you and takes you to platforms. So these are the countries in which we have a direct connect. We are going very deep with the multilateral connects as well with G20, and I just wanted to take you through the example of the Dubai Expo. About 100 plus startups were funded by the government to be the part of the India innovation sector at the Expo, and a lot of follow-up funding and pilot orders have followed for startups through these visits. Yes, and I would just like to end this slide by saying that one, be a part of this journey and join us in these through marquee programs like this. And I truly believe that the next big idea is India, and through the support of all of you, we are here to change this world. All our policies and actions are chaired by Piyush Goyal sir, who is the Minister of Commerce and Industry. On a quarterly basis, we sit with the National Startup Advisory Council that consists of members of the private ecosystem to make policies. So it is not just a government-led thing, it is a best example of a PPP mode thing where we are making policies with the people, by the people, and for the people. Yes, and that's where I end. Thank you so much.
Thank you for talking about the overall journey. You know, it's heartening to see that we've had back in 2016 400 odd registered startups to close to a lakh startups now. Almost at 250 times growth. And I think, kudos to the work done by the team that's behind Startup India on this one. And thank you for taking us through all the interventions that the government is doing, because what a startup needs is, it needs easier, starting up, policies. It needs funding, it needs mentorship, and it needs market. And I think you've taken us through all the programs, and I think it'll be beneficial for all the startups here to leverage some of them. Thank you so much, Aastha. Next, I would like to mention, call upon Dr. Roy to talk about some of the initiatives being taken in Startup Odisha and his own journey of transforming the tech startup ecosystem.
Thank you, Mr. Rattan. First of all, I must express my gratitude towards organizers for affording this opportunity to Startup Odisha to present our views. I must say that of late, the startup ecosystem of India, this nation has grown leaps and bounds. We have seen the presentation of Head of Startup India, Ms. Aastha Grover, and we have seen that how in a very small span of time, India has become a home for 107 unicorns. These are very interesting, very aspiring numbers. And most importantly, we have added 24 unicorns only in year 2022 itself. And we have received close to $24 billion as an investment into the unicorn and startup ecosystem of this country. And that these numbers are very encouraging, and they state certain things. You know that this fast growth of a startup ecosystem is attributed to certain parameters, certain factors. We know that India has been home of a very vibrant IT services industry. It initiated close to 3.5 decades before, and it moved up the value chain from a maintenance service to coding service, as we used to call. Now it is home to R&D as a service. It has moved up the value chain, and now world's most of the technology companies have moved their R&D center within India. And that has helped India to become a home of a lot of talent in terms of product creation, solution architecture, and the people who are capable of converting not only ideation, but also converting the ideas into strong technology products. And that has helped India to, quickly become a home of 107 unicorns. We know that this talent pool that is employed in IT sector is close to more than 5 million strong engineering technology personnel. And they are not only helping the startups in terms of product creation, they themselves become mentors, they become investors, and some of them become founders. Of late, we have also seen that digital adoption and digitization has grown at a very multiplace. We know that during the COVID, digital adoption has grown, and that is why, as you have seen from the presentation of Ms. Aastha, there are a lot of growth that is happening in e-commerce sector because of the digital access. All the people, length and breadth of this country, literate, illiterate, young boy and girl, old or younger, they all are working on the internet. They are accessing the sites, placing orders, browsing, catalogs, and that is how the unicorn, the startup that we have in these sectors are getting a great and huge amount of user mass, and that is increasing their valuation. We also know that the startups is no more capital intensive because it's based on ideation, and most of the industry 4.0 technologies are only talent centric. Once you have an idea, you don't require much money actually to convert your idea into product. Gone are the days when you used to require huge amount of capital to create a MSME even. This is a kind of times we are passing through where idea is the treasure, idea is the asset, idea is the capital, and therefore it is idea centric, and therefore young boys and girls of this country, whether they are in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, they are also trying their hands on the startups. From the data, the total 24 unicorns that have been added in year 2022, only 9 are coming from tier 1 cities. Rest are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And this is something which is a very encouraging trend that we are witnessing right now. And therefore, I must say that in times to come, because of these factors, and also because the various state governments are taking proactive measures, taking initiative, bringing policies. Apart from the Startup India policy that works to help all of us, the various state government are bringing new policies. And here I must say that Startup Odisha, which came into existence at the same point of time when Startup India came into existence in 2016. And very soon, just after Startup India scheme, in the year 2016 itself, Odisha came up with Odisha Startup Policy 2016. Best, we are being recognized time and again as a top performing state in the startup ecosystem, and that proves that not only we have a policy in place, but we are implementing our policy in the most industry friendly manner, and that is bringing those laurels and recognition that we have now. We have grown to about 27 strong incubation ecosystem, more than 1500 startups that are registered with us. We are capitalizing and leveraging a kind of all sorts of R&D educational institution, R&D institution all across Odisha, and that is why we are working with more than 20 nodal agencies. They help in nurturing those startups, in evaluating their proposals. We have also come up as Ms. Aastha Grover has just spoken about seed fund, angel investment ecosystem. We are sensitizing the HNIs all across Odisha to get together, to network and create the angel investing culture in the state, so that we can, provide much needed angel investment infrastructure and support mechanism to the startups in our state. Secondly, we have also come up with Odisha Startup Growth Fund with 250 crore commitment from government of Odisha. And you will be all happy to know that our fund has grown to 1000 crore. And we have roped in SIDBI, which is also managing Startup India Fund. They are going to manage our fund and with the same kind of efficiency and yield. They will also bring their own fund. And therefore another 10 years, state of Odisha will be absolutely ready and available with a lot of fund for the startups. And therefore I must call upon the startup ecosystem in this entire country to look towards the Odisha if you want to access the fund, if you want to access the market. Some of you must be knowing that Odisha is a very mineral and agricultural rich state. And therefore we have large manufacturing industry base in metals, in minerals and such other sectors. And therefore our startups are also getting connected through the corporate innovation program to these industries which are becoming their users of their product. We are also connecting these startups into the government sector, and therefore the market access program, the investment access program, we have one of the best in the entire country. We are a very vibrant state, adaptable state, and therefore we are not very content with the kind of success we have achieved so far. And therefore we are also revising our policy at this presently, and I must say that Startup India is helping with. We want to become India's best startup policy, and I am very sure that we will very soon announce that policy. With these few things, that I must say that Odisha is marching towards becoming a startup nation, a startup destination of entire Eastern India. We are trying to get into the educational institutions, schools, universities, technology educational institutions, and catch the young boys and girls right there itself. We believe that even if the tier 1 cities of India have an edge in terms of technology startup ecosystem, we firmly believe that in case we are able to sensitize the young boys and girls of smaller towns, all educational institutions, schools and colleges, and nurture them through pre-incubation program and with the entire ecosystem there itself, we will be sooner catching up with the tier 1 cities in terms of the number of startup, the quality of a startup, and the kind of value and wealth that startups of state of Odisha will create. The government of Odisha is absolutely proactive. We have a very stable government. Our Chief Minister is continuously Chief Minister for more than 24 years now. And that is why it's a policy-driven state. And anything that is required to be done is absolutely possible in our state. I must call upon all the ecosystem enablers to come to state of Odisha, help us in terms of nurturing and delivering the startup ecosystem in our state, and create a kind of win-win situation for all of us. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Rai, and I really, it's so good to see and great to know states like Orissa being so progressive, and also the kind of center-state combination that is working together to drive this entire startup story for us is extremely something that we all need to be proud of. And I think a couple of more points from me. One is if you look at the ease of doing business, the last World Bank ranking we had improved significantly. Even in the innovation index, the global innovation index, India is today at number 40, and in the lower and middle income group, we are number 1 as far as innovation is concerned. So I think there is no better time than now to start up in the country. We have a huge consumer base. Policies are good. Both people like Dr. Rai and Aastha from center and states are driving this entire growth story. With that, let me move to Gul, because we've heard from two speakers who've been in the government, driving that change. So we wanted to hear from somebody who's outside the ecosystem to get your thoughts and views. Gul.
Thank you, Himanshu. And it was absolutely wonderful hearing Aastha ji and Dr. Rai speak. And when you mentioned the metric, Himanshu, that India has moved up to 46th in the Global Innovation Index, that itself is proof of the pudding. The very fact that the startup India ecosystem that is being nurtured is yielding innovation. And that innovation is bringing forth an era of transformation. Our ambition to be a $1 trillion economy is going to a very large extent, be helped up to the tune of, it's estimated, 500 billion through the innovation ecosystem that Startup India and Startup Odisha and other states are incubating. What is a transformative era? The transformative era that is today being brought in, to be able to truly understand it, one has to take a step back. A transformative era does two things. One, it creates policy incentives. Two, there's a rewarding market that is there for those who take that leap. Let's talk about the rewarding market to begin with. The first manned flight by the Wright brothers was a transformative era that yielded companies like Lockheed, Boeing, Airbus, McDonnell Douglas, so on and so forth. The second transformative era that we all will easily remember, most of the people in this hall, is the advent of the internet age, which brought about incredible wealth creation from companies like Google, Yahoo, and then a most recent transformative era from smartphones created wealth through companies like Facebook and WhatsApp. So whenever there's a transformative event, there lies an opportunity for immense value creation, and the market always rewards such innovation. Very quickly, I want to segue into electric mobility, which is my area of interest, and I like to believe advocacy as well. In the last 2 years, two incredible things have happened in the electric ecosystem. In 21, an electric car was launched, and it had about 10,000 bookings in the very first year. In 22 and now beginning of 23, two other cars were launched. In fact, I have the privilege of giving away and handing over the keys of the 500th XUV 400, which is the latest electric car out of Mahindra and Mahindra. Between this and a Tata car launch several months before this, they've already garnered as many bookings as the entire year of 2021. 2021 saw 22,000 electric cars sold. We've already exceeded that number in the last few months. So there exists an ecosystem of policy incentive as a result of no registration and road tax for electric vehicles. And on the incentive side for charge point operator, I'm co-founder of an electric charging ecosystem, Sunfuel Electric. And there is also a policy incentive in place for electric charging infrastructure. And that is where I feel innovation is really needed, both at the policy incentive and from an innovation standpoint, which is the hallmark of this hall right now. For a charge point operator like Sunfuel, there are two big policy incentives the government gives. One, that there is no cost of a new connection when you first set up the charge point operation. And two, there is no fixed monthly rental for your allocated load. However, today, that is capped at 30 kilowatt hour. Whereas most vehicles, including the bomb electric range of vehicles from Mahindra and Mahindra, charge at 175 kilowatt hour. So the need of the hour right now, both in terms of innovation from the startup ecosystem, as well as innovation in terms of policy framework, is to incentivize ahead of the curve. We need to start incentivizing our policy initiatives from charge point operators to be greater than 50, 60, 70 kilowatt, and probably look at 150 kilowatt per hour as the settling space. Secondly, the grid needs to be overhauled for us to be able to pull that kind of power. And I want to close, Himanshu, by saying that we are truly at the risk of being repetitive in a transformative era. Our rankings in innovation index that have gone up are testament to 4 important changes that have happened in India. Intellectual property protection. Dr. Rai spoke about the fact that today an idea is all you need. And that idea today, thanks to the overhauling of our intellectual property rights and laws, has greater protection than we had earlier. I mean, as a law student, we still have a long way to go to protect IPR. But I think we've come a long way. Our financial institutions withstand scrutiny internationally. We have incredible AI development happening. And that is the transformative era. I mean, today you have vehicles, and again, full disclosure, I'm proud to be associated with the Mahindra and Mahindra group. We have driver, drowsiness, Adrenox. These are all AI tools, ADAS, which have been developed in India. And these are taking innovation, AI, and driver safety to another level. So to summarize, this is the best time. It's never been better. And I'm confident with the kind of initiatives the government is putting in, both at the state level, like at Odisha, and of course at the central level, as Aastha ji said. This is going to keep getting better and better. And my humble urge to everybody in this room is to take up this opportunity that lies in this truly transformative era enabled by the startup ecosystem and by Startup India, and grab the opportunity that lies to create path-breaking innovation.
Fantastic, Gul. And I really appreciate the kind of passion with which you speak. And the transformating era you talked about, whether it was the Wright brothers one, the smartphone advent, now the electric charge mobility. I'm reminded of a quote by Lenin when he said, there are decades when nothing happens. There are decades when nothing happens. And there are weeks when decades happen. So I think, this is the time, and I'm sure we are at the cusp of a extremely transformative era. The government policies, the youth, everything is on our side in a way, and it's for us to kind of grab that opportunity and take it. So thank you, Gul, for that. And we'll now get into a quick panel discussion as well. And my first question, I'll start with Gul again. Gul, you know that now that you've been in the startup space, you realize that almost 90% of the startups today fail. So the success rate pretty much is only 10%. And you in your life have ventured into newer areas, from a beauty pageant to a winner to a Bollywood actor to an activist. You've been into politics to a certified pilot, etc. So how have you kind of ventured into these areas, and how come you don't have many failures to talk about?
Well, I think I'll address the failure piece first. Of course, I have lots of failures. And I could look back, and frankly, I would actually have trouble counting them, but they are there. And the reason I have trouble counting them, because I personally view every failure as an opportunity to recalibrate, reevaluate, set new goals, and make a roadmap for those goals. So yes, there have been many failures. I mean, I'd like to list I could list several at this point. It will take some effort because I don't see life as a series of failures, but there have been. Coming back to the fact that diversification is what I have had the privilege of doing, because of the kind of access an actor gives you is truly remarkable. I mean, today to be sitting on a stage and probably being recognized by 25-30% of the people without really having to open my mouth is a privilege. The fact that I have the opportunity to put forth my ideas and hopefully maybe, take another 25-30% people going back home maybe knowing about me. But I start with an advantage as somebody who has a platform, as somebody who has the reach. And I think that reach is something that I've always been very conscious of harnessing, both at a level of societal change and as an entrepreneur. At Sunfuel, my conviction comes from a place that electric mobility is the future. We need cleaner air. As a parent, as a mother to a 5-year-old child, I'm acutely aware of the world I want to leave behind for my son. And if nothing else, at least the air should be cleaner. And the government milestone that I hope that we all will hit of being majoritarily electric by 2030 is something that I'm happy to push at every level, personally, professionally, socially, politically, if the need arises. So I think, to summarize very quickly, I feel the opportunity that we all have through whatever platform we may have must be harnessed in entirety to pursue the life goals that we've set for ourselves.
It's interesting how you don't view failures as because ultimately, failures are also a part of the journey, towards success. So I think that's great to hear. And also your point on being a mother and leaving a legacy behind. And there's a follow-up question that I will have on that, because your father has been very influential in terms of your thinking. He's always pushed your boundaries, been a guide and a mentor to you. And I think from a startup and innovation space, a lot of founders need that mentorship which is not available today. They need the right guidance to be able to navigate the complex environment and to be able to take those right business decisions. How do you see we can provide the right mentorship to young innovators today in the country?
I think Aastha ji and Dr. Rai have already answered that question. The kind of mentorship that's available as a part of Startup India and the various state startup chapters, Startup Odisha's board is right here, is really where that comes in. The fact that you have access to resources which include marketing, CAC, customer acquisition, raising funds, and of course grants as well. I mean, why would you want to dilute equity and be hostage to an investor when you can avail of a grant at a time when you really need that money? I think that ecosystem is actually being provided by this incredible Startup India platform. As a growing up young person, the kind of mentorship one seeks from one's parents, and I've truly been privileged to have my father as my role model, never having to look outside my home for a role model. And I learned a few things. The two critical ones were honesty, integrity, and communicating and saying what you feel, hopefully diplomatically. And I think these two traits of my father's have really helped me in good stead. And I've always relied upon my ability to communicate an idea to get me through any crisis.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you'll be happy to share your experience at some point in time and be a mentor for some of the young startups as well.
I'm hoping Aastha ji will call me and I'll be happy to do that.
Great. Next, moving to Mr. Rai. Dr. Rai, you've been, fairly involved in the tech startup ecosystem, and currently, and also kind of taking it to tier 2, tier 3 cities. What's happening in the country today? As a lot of innovation is coming from Delhi, from Mumbai, from Bangalore, from Hyderabad, right? But what about tier 2, tier 3 cities? An idea can actually come from anywhere. So how do we kind of take it to tier 2, tier 3 cities so that they get the right platform as well to succeed?
I think you have rightly pointed out this anomaly has to be removed. In fact, but from the data, if you look at about close to 97,000 total startup, as we always say, 48% come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. I just pointed out in my earlier statement that in year 2022, out of 24 unicorns that have been generated, only 9 have come up from tier 1 cities. So there is a clear-cut indication of the contribution of tier 2 and tier 3 cities in the innovation and startup ecosystem. Most importantly, for an ideation, you are not required to be in tier 1 cities. Obviously, tier 1 cities offer you best of the class mentors, technology, market access and ecosystem. And therefore, what is important today is to take the ecosystem at the grassroots level in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because as far as ideation is concerned, if you create a right kind of sensitization work, if you create a good connect to the educational institution at the grassroots level, the young boys and girls are sensitized the culture of innovation, ideation is inculcated them at the places where they are earning education, getting their education, then only the ecosystem has to be taken to them. And now with the kind of policies that the state governments are creating, the central government is creating, and the ecosystem is growing, it's not difficult to take the ecosystem at the grassroots level. If you look at the example of Odisha, we created a startup yatra. We have also taken up startup express yatra to the schools. As we are planning to open incubator in each and every district, open incubator in each and every educational institution. That means that we were trying to take the ecosystem at the grassroots level. And as I said, the kind of innovation, the kind of fundamental ideas that are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, young boys and girls, are not coming from tier 1 cities, because they are the young boys and girls who are witnessing problem, facing problem, and they are the people who are ideating as to how to solve those problems. And that is how the entire startup ecosystem has to emerge and must emerge from the tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. And I completely agree with the point that it has to be a localized view, because some of the problems at a city level, at a district level, are extremely local, and we need to kind of be able to, we need to have solutions which are localized solutions to solve them, and therefore the ecosystem needs to be taken to these cities so that some of those solutions also come forward. My question to Aastha next is, you've talked about what the government has done. There's a lot that the government has done, but if you take a step back and look at the startup ecosystem, government can only do so much, right? Government can only be a facilitator. Ultimately, the job has to be done by the startups, and there are other players in the ecosystem as well, which includes both the private sector and the academia. What do you think the role the private sector and the academia can play, along with the government, to create a further, conducive ecosystem?
Yeah, thank you, Himanshu. I think very pertinent question, and government is acting as a facilitator. How do we get the private ecosystem in between? To start with, I think it was very easy to get the investors, for the fact that for the 10 investments that they're taking, even if one gives them a 100x return, that's a loud enough incentive for them to be part of this ecosystem. In fact, a couple of years ago, the head of KKR, Henry Crevis, had come to our office, and he said that, I can't sleep at night. I don't know where is the next idea, who is revolutionizing next, and I want to be the first one to invest in it, right? So given the returns, the superlative returns, the investors come into the picture already. It is a very simple money game. Second, right, but what is it that we can get more out of them? How do we ask them to look at the innovations beyond their network, beyond the IIT, IIM, alum network, beyond the hubs, which are limited, I would say, to Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, but coming up with all the regional chapters. So what we have done is that with the help of SIDBI, we have built an Investor Connect platform. What you need to do is just log on to that platform, and using a matchmaking AI, you will be able to connect with all the 90 plus alternate investment VC funds that are there and take your pitch to them. So the journey of matchmaking has been digitized. The second role where the private ecosystem can act like, and I think Gul and you both touched upon it, is mentorship, right? In your journey, you do need mentorship. I always say that don't repeat a mistake. If you can learn from the mistake of anyone, you rather avoid it, and feel free to make new mistakes, because it is inevitable to avoid mistakes, but learn from the experience of others. So helping you find the right mentor, be it in terms of your marketing needs, be it in terms of your customer acquisition, be it in terms of your making business plan, getting your story right, or getting to know deeply about a sector. We've launched, Piyush Goyal sir recently announced the mentorship platform. It's called MARC, Mentorship Advisory Assistance Resilience for Growth. And we'd love to have you all, Gul, Omkar sir, Himanshu, on that platform. We've already got some great investors, academicians, media houses, representatives on that. Again, using gamification, you can choose a sector, you can choose an area, you can choose a function. You can choose, I need domain expertise or anything, and it will throw up mentor suggestions. And just like a LinkedIn, you connect you can use the platform to host your mentorship sessions as well. We are doing a lot of one-on-one mentoring through that, and we will be doing a lot of one-to-many as well. The third where I see the ecosystem contributing is, we've talked about investments, we've talked about mentorships, is simply giving back, right? And giving back in terms of, recently a bunch of unicorns came together, announced a fund, and they wanted to give back to the community. We've had founders who are creating hubs. Ritesh is very active in Bhubaneswar, his own hometown, guiding and new mentors. So I feel, if we can commit 1 hour of our time, of our resources, giving back to the society, that is also very, very helpful for the ecosystem at large.
Fantastic. Thanks, Aastha, for touching all three of them. And rightly so. I think the private sector and academia have a huge role to play, whether it's providing investments, funding support, or mentorship support. And it's great that we have a platform through which startups can directly connect and interact with mentors as well as investors. Coming back to Gul again, and I'm taking the liberty because the organizers have not yet pinged me on time to ask a few more questions. So Gul, you are a certified pilot, right? And you of all people would know that in a journey, the takeoffs and the landings are the most difficult of them all, right? And even in a business or an entrepreneurial journey, it's starting up and exiting a business, which is extremely difficult. And more so in the case of a startup, and I'll compare it again to the flying world, you are entering into uncharted territories with limited navigation. So are there any learnings from the flying world that we can apply and, some of these startups can take back from here?
So the crux of being a pilot is 3 things: aviate, navigate, communicate. The first thing you do is fly the plane. You don't stop flying the plane because you don't know where to go. So you continue to aviate, which is you fly, then you navigate. So you say, okay, my aircraft is stayed in level, I'm flying, all my parameters are in good condition. Now I'll navigate. So I've got good altitude, I can open the map and I can see where I want to go. And then once you know where you're going and you're actually flying, you communicate. I think the analogy can be extended to anything we do in life. You've got to know what you're doing, then where you're going, and then you can communicate that. If you don't know the first 2, it becomes challenging. A lot of incredible ideas fail, in my opinion, as a result of over-enthusiastic marketing and communication. You start by communicating something which isn't fully developed. Having said that, let the good not be the enemy of the perfect. That's the other thing, right? I remember my first solo flight. I was just scared to leave, and the instructor said, "Go, you're ready." I said no, and I just kept standing on the apron. And usually when there's the solo pilot doing their first flight, they, in a flying school, they curtail the airspace in case you go out there and go mad or something. So I'm standing on the threshold before the holding point before I enter the active runway, and I'm not moving. And my instructor's in the tower on the radio. He's saying, "What's stopping you? Go. It's okay. It may not be the most perfect landing, but you'll come down safely. I'm confident because I've been instructing you these last few hours." And that's really it. Sometimes we don't need to wait forever to perfect an idea. We should just go to market as long as we're convinced as to what the idea is. And then the landing, it could be hard, but the manufacturer limit on hard landings is way higher than we think. The aircraft can take a fairly hard landing, 3G as far as commercial planes are concerned, 1.3G. We go nowhere near that. So the aircraft is far more robust than you think, and you are far more accomplished than you think. So self-doubt is what holds back a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself. And what I've learned over time is 2 things. Let go of the self-doubt and just take off, because actually taking off is easier than landing. Taking off is optional, but landing is mandatory.
Fantastic. And, yes, can we have a round of applause for the, passionate reply on that one? But, on that self-doubt thing, I'm reminded of another quote, There's somebody who said that unless you're a lion tamer or a fighter pilot, the fear is 100% in your head. it's basically, you are doubting yourself, and you have to kind of overcome that. And therefore, exactly, I completely agree that a lot of startups or innovators, when we are starting up, we need to be confident about where we are going, as you said, and just be confident of our abilities. So thank you so much for that, Gul. And maybe, I'll ask one last question to you, if we have the time permitting, and that's on your political, side of things. You're an activist, right? And I know that you joined politics because you didn't want to be an armchair critic, criticizing just for the sake of it and not being a part of the solution. And if I look at it, a lot of these startup founders are also activists. They're trying to solve problems, may not be political, but they're trying to solve problems through their own, creative, innovative ways, whether it's, delivering groceries in 10 minutes or designing implants that could detect, for early detection of cancer. And they need people to huddle up with who are equally passionate and like-minded. And therefore, I wanted to understand, in the ventures that you did, how difficult was to connect and form the team, the founding team, and how difficult was it to stick together?
Absolutely. I think the question is very, very deep and incisive. I feel a startup founder is a lot like an activist. They want to fix the problem. An entrepreneur must first identify the existence of a problem, and if they feel passionately about it, they must find ways to fix that problem. The first startup I was associated with was health and fitness. I'm very passionate about fitness, and I feel it's changed my life. I'm wearing a dress that's 15 years old. So I don't buy new clothes because most of my clothes continue to fit. And it's not just because of fitness. I mean, my point is, fitness gives you mental bandwidth, which is 2x, 3x of what you would have in case you didn't pursue a regimen. And I felt I wanted to communicate that to more and more people, but I had finite resources individually. And I partnered with a wonderful team to create MobiFit, a technology company that built fitness apps, running apps, strength apps, yoga apps. I exited that business 2 years ago. But it was an incredible learning journey, and which brings me to my second point, identifying partners you can work with. That is really the meat of it all, because it's like a marriage. And while divorces may be rising and may be fashionable, I am of the belief that marriage is for keeps. You make that decision knowing fully well that you will go to your grave as this person's spouse. And that's what I believe. So choosing the right partners, team is so important, especially when you're giving out equity, right? Because that's like marriage forever. You have to crash land with them.
Almost like a pre-nuptial, right? In a way.
You're crash landing with them. If the landing isn't good, you're all going to crash and die. So yeah, choosing the team is critical, but I don't have an answer to that. That's part gut. That's part what you feel in the moment. It's part your instinct. And then part of it needs to be some kind of an analysis, which you do. But really, that's hit and miss.
With that, I think we come to the close of the session. Thank you so much, Gul, Dr. Rai, and Aastha, for great insights and taking us through the entire startup journey, what needs to happen, and some of the analogies that Gul gave us are some of the key takeaways that at least personally I'm going to take away from this. Thank you so much. Thanks, Gul. Thanks, Dr. Rai.
Thank you, Himanshu.
And thanks,
Thank you so
Aastha,
much
for this.